All right, everybody, I'm testing this out. We've had some changes with. All right, everybody, I'm testing this out. So we've had some changes on Facebook where they're not allowing me to stream directly to the Facebook group. So hopefully I can get through these technology issues and you guys can confirm for me that you can hear me okay. As usual, thanks for jumping on this week's Facebook Live. Put in the comments for me if you don't mind that you can hear me okay before we get started. I just want to make sure that we've got everything connected correctly here. Facebook made a major change. All right, we got a thumbs up. Perfect. All right, yeah, I mean, it's 5 minutes ago, 10 minutes ago, I found out that Facebook made a change where I can't stream our Facebook Lives directly to the Facebook group. So there was a couple workarounds. Looks like I've figured it out. So I'm glad you guys were able to jump on. I appreciate you coming on. As usual, B&B Investing Group, we like to navigate the differences between the short-term rental strategies of doing master leasing, buying distressed properties, and then also managing properties for other investors. And then, as always, we like to have our guests on that are experienced short-term rental investors that have different niches. And I'm happy today to have my friend Marc on with us. He specializes in midterm rentals, and we're going to kind of do a deep dive on that today. So, Marc, thanks so much, buddy, for jumping on with us today.
Oh, my pleasure, man. Thank you for having me.
All right, cool. A little bit of a delay there, but why don't you give us kind of a brief introduction of kind of how you got started with short-term rentals and midterm rentals in particular, and then we'll kind of go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been investing for several years, and I think this was kind of around during COVID, where there was a big play, right? There was a big push, a big wave into Airbnb, and lots of gurus out there promoting it. So it started becoming a thing. And I typically stay in my lane, right? However, there was just something about the cash flow that I absolutely loved, right? So that sparked my interest. And I want to say closer to the end of COVID, I decided to invest in some courses, bought a few courses from a group of people. I think I went and paid some direct, scheduling with some people who are already in the business, kind of getting on their calendar and learning a little bit about them. And I quickly realized that I didn't want to get into the hustle and bustle, the day in and the day out of the short-term rental piece, right? However, there was this unknown part of short-term rentals called midterm rentals that was not like short-term, but also not like long-term traditional renting. So that kind of sparked my interest. And so I started doing a little bit more research with that. And then lo and behold, I ended up jumping out and getting my first corporate lease. And then I want to say that was probably April of 2022. And we've been rocking and rolling since. So had my first one. And I think after about 8 or 9 months, once I got all my money back, within like another couple of months, we added another one. And then we're up to 4 now. So that's kind of like how I got into it. But it's a little bit interesting, right? Because there's not much stuff. I mean, now it's a little bit more, but back then there weren't that many people talking about minimum 30-day stays, right? As far as corporate leases. So it was a little bit new territory for me, but we had the foundation, right, from the real estate side to easily transition into that. So it was a no-brainer. Once the numbers started rolling in and understanding the cash flow and the net profit that we were making, it was absolutely no-brainer to scale that piece.
All right. So that's interesting because I know a lot of folks like, me personally, with my core focus being short-term rentals, I don't turn away midterm rental guests. In fact, I kind of like that. It kind of gives us a little bit of a break. We have traveling nurses that we work with, and we've been engaging with a lot of insurance companies that folks are getting repairs done on their homes and need somewhere to stay which usually starts out with 3 to 4 weeks. And then being in real estate, we all know stuff gets delayed. So it ends up being a 5 or 6 or 8 week stay. So we love those. But it's interesting that you kind of got your start with just going straight to that model. Did you start out with short term at all, or you just dove straight into midterm?
No, we dove straight in. We dove straight in. I think my very first short-term rental guest was in between midterm bookings. We had maybe like a 2-week gap in between, and obviously I didn't want to lose the revenue, so I went into Airbnb and adjusted the stipulation, right? So we made it to like a minimum 3-day stay, and we were able to get like 2 in between bookings, 4 nights each or something like that. That kind of kept our occupancy high. I mean, we're pretty much booked out, right? It is a different mindset 100% for midterm rentals, because when you're accustomed to your open calendar and whoever books at any point in time, and then trying to fill those spots in between, it's a completely different mindset when your entire calendar is open, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so when I think for me, or for our business, starting out that way helped, right? Because we didn't have that roadblock or that hurdle of getting over that open calendar, no booking syndrome, right? So,
Yeah.
but yeah, it was pretty good getting in. A little bit tough at first, but we've kind of mastered the art of the 30-day minimum stay piece, and so I think we'll stay in that model.
So the first unit that you did, you mentioned it was 8 months. Is that it took 8 months to kind of recoup your initial investment to stage and set up the property in the beginning?
100%. So
Okay.
when we underwrote the first deal, I wanted to make sure that what we're spending on, obviously our first month's, last month's rent, our deposits, our utility costs that come up at first, and the furnishings, right? I wanted to make sure that we kept on the budget. Obviously, we didn't. There were some unknowns that we weren't aware of, but just looking at what the market was asking. And so we're in Sandy Springs, right? So just to kind of dial back a little bit, a midterm rental is, yes, it's a 30-day minimum stay, but we are 100% catered to like medical professionals, right? And so, all of our units have, king size beds, 55-inch TVs, blackout curtains, noise machines. We have, we stock the refrigerator and the pantry with food and seasonings and oils. They're stocked with laundry detergent and bleach and stuff like that. It's literally a walk in, and you don't have to do anything for the first week, right? So there was a lot of things that we had to kind of factor in, but yeah, after about the 7th or 8th month, we realized that we can make our money back even shorter if we even streamline it more, right? But prior to us making our money back, obviously you need to make sure that the market that you're going to tap into calls for the upwards rent, because not only are you having to make more than what you have to pay in expenses, you also can't charge more than what that market costs, right? So it's standard CMA, right? And so for us, we took a major risk by being the most expensive in the market. And that was a big risk at first, and it was pretty anxious the first couple of weeks that we didn't get any type of like notifications, no interest. I want to say, actually, no, I take it back. The second unit took 2 weeks to get the first booking, but once we went live, Rich, we were booked in like 24, 48 hours, right?
Nice.
And so it was just like absolutely genius and super surprising, because I didn't think it was going to take off. And so we underwrote to make sure that we net at least $1,000 per month after all expenses, everything else. And so knowing that, I think we spent like $7,000, or I think between 65 and 7,500 for everything. That includes all the rent, all of the furnishings. And part of the reason we kept that cost down is because we understood how you can get the type of things that you need, right? So it's not like ordering off of Amazon, Wayfair, this sort of stuff. We actually went to like hotel liquidation places, these wholesale places that have furniture from older hotels and stuff like that. And so we were able to get the majority of our like big ticket items That's your beds, your mattresses, your sleep sofa. Sleep sofa is a must. Your TV stand, nightstand, lamps, safe, irons, all of that stuff. A lot of that came in bulk. Now we just order it, right? But that initial unit was kind of the trial and error, so to speak. And so I think we went over budget a little bit, but by the 6th or 7th month, I started realizing, okay, we're about to, get all of our money back. And then it's been pure profit ever since. And that has allowed us to, multiply.
So the first unit what's the size of that property? And was it an apartment or a condo? What was the makeup of the property to begin with?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So the first 3 units that we have all been 1-bedroom apartments, right? So we take corporate leases in apartment complexes. And the reason for that is because we're catering to nurses and medical professionals. We love the amenities, right? The pool, the gym, the security of the gate, the trash compactor. Some places have concierge trash. So we love the amenities. And we chose that route because, one apartment or a condo or a standalone property is not going to have these amenities. And so we figured we would provide more by doing so. So majority of our units are all 1-bedroom. Our latest unit is a 2-bedroom, but it's also in an apartment complex. And I want to say as we expand, we're going to probably add some more 2-bedrooms to it. The 2 bedrooms have been performing quite amazingly in comparison to the 1-bedroom. But it's mostly 1-bedroom apartments.
Right. So your initial research was around the healthcare medical space, in particular, traveling nurses. Is that correct? Or is it a different aspect in the medical industry?
Yeah, so it's a slightly different aspect because when you're catering to travel nurses, right? What are travel nurses? They are nurses, nurse practitioners, clinicians who have certain specialties, right? And then they are sought out by these medical staffing agencies or these hospitals based upon that specialty. And so it doesn't work for every hospital, right? So the first thing you want to know is, what's the trauma level of that hospital? And it goes from 1 to 5. And so the higher the trauma level is, the more specialized this hospital is, which then requires a greater specialty of nurses, right? And so we're not talking about your regular nurses that are coming out of med school. We're talking about more specialized. And so once you identify where those hospitals are in your state, then you start planning around them. And so part of our criteria, part of Dowden Rentals, is that we want to make sure all of our units are within a mile, right? So a mile or less. So there's a limited number of condominiums, apartment complexes that are around these hospitals, right? And our competitors are, depending on the state, right? Because we're in Ohio as well. But depending on the state, the cost of getting into real estate closer to these hospitals are astronomical in comparison to a corporate lease, right? Just the cost of getting into that piece of real estate. So we went the arbitrage route, which is the corporate lease, and making sure that when you're analyzing where you want to be, at least for us, within a walking distance, right? Because these people are coming from out of state, sometimes even out of the country. And so they may not have access to a vehicle, or they may not have the ability or the window to spend additional funds, right, for a vehicle. So having the walkability is key to us being booked.
What's your average stay for each guest?
Oh man,
is it long time or is it?
No, I think our average stay is anywhere between 70 to 80 nights.
Okay.
Per booking, right? Our first year, we had 5 guests the entire year, right? So when you think about that, right, that's a little over 60 days, right? And so medical professionals, specifically travel nurses, they have a 12 to 13 week contract. Sometimes they either extend, or sometimes, depending on the hospital, they might get cut short. So you're going to get at least 12 weeks out of it. Number of people that you're speaking with, it reduces your turn, and it reduces your cost involved with those turn, cleaners, supplies, etc.
Are you engaging directly with the hospital for getting prospects and leads, or what platforms are you using? I'm assuming you're on Airbnb as well as one
Yeah.
of the platforms.
Yeah. So we initially started with Furnish Finder and Airbnb, right? The two major ones. We jumped on Verbo. I didn't like it, so I came off. So we're practically only on these two right now. We're now in the process of building out our direct booking site, which I'm choosing to go actually building it from the ground up and not using any of these other platforms that provide that type of, I guess, website. I think we talked about it one time. But once I did that, then I started engaging with the hospitals, right? So getting with the HR department, finding out who is the person that's in charge of, hiring the nurses, whether they are involving staffing agencies, which most of them do. It's an easier play and it's a cheaper cost for the hospital. So once you identify which agency they're using, then you can contact the agency. You can even get the contact information. But I'll be honest, a lot of our recent bookings have not been clinicians. They have been, right now, we have two people, one from Asia, one from Africa, that have been in our units. And then our other two units, we have a contract with the museum in Cleveland. And so their guests that they bring in for their museum, whatever, talks that they have, tours or conferences or what have you. We have a 6 month contract with them. So whoever they bring in, and then we have one nurse in our other fourth unit. So
the first, you got that first unit set up, you got your initial investment back, and then you went off and got another unit set up and kind of rolled out from there. And so what brought you into the Ohio market?
So we were already in Ohio, right? We've been investing, buying and selling residential real estate, 1 to 4 unit multifamily properties in Ohio for, I think, about 5 years now. So it was an easy transition for us. But part of the research, the one thing I absolutely love about Cleveland, which is where we are, is they have this hospital hub. So within a half a square mile radius, they have like 4 major hospitals and a bunch of medical offices and smaller doctors and stuff. So I mean, it's like a think where Northside is in Sandy Springs, how you have Northside, you have Choa, you have Emory, this kind of like cluster, right? So it was a no-brainer. And then, Cleveland Clinic is a level 1 trauma. So it was a no-brainer. So at that point, it was just, okay, how can we find the apartment complex or the condominium that fits our needs, that's okay with taking corporate leases, because it has to be a corporate lease, right? And so once we identified that, it was off to the races.
What are your typical terms that you go after on your corporate lease? What's the length? Is there any special negotiating that you do on the terms typically?
Yeah. So the longer, the better, right? I would take a 5-year lease if I could. But they usually start you at 12 and then you renegotiate. Right now, I think the longest one we have out of all of them is an 18-month lease. But yeah, so part of that negotiation is the length, right? You can kind of get a little bit lower rate, the monthly rental, if you take a longer lease. The other thing is the subleasing aspect, right? So you have to make sure that you can sublease, right? A lot of apartment complexes don't allow it, but if you go the corporate lease route, it's a completely different, right, process, because it's like a B2B, right? So they're not concerned with your credit history and your eviction and all that type of stuff, because this is actual business. So that's one thing. And then the other main thing is the ability to market, right? So majority of apartment complexes market just as anywhere else for short-term, mid-term, long-term marketing is concerned. So getting past that, right? Some apartment complexes, and this is not just the owner, this is more so the property management, right? They may not allow you to market. So you have to have that conversation with the property manager. And sometimes it's an owner operator as well. So the owner would be the same person managing it. You just have to have that conversation. Listen, we're not, for one, even in cities like Sandy Springs, where you have the short-term rental ordinance, we're not a short-term rental. Although we're on Airbnb, we are not a short-term rental by definition. So we may use Airbnb as a platform, but for folks that are outside of our industry, anything on Airbnb is an Airbnb, right?
Yeah.
So just having those conversations and explaining to them the business model and where we're getting our clients from and our guests from and that sort of thing. So you have to have those conversations because it has to make sense, right? One, you don't want to spend all this money and then be subject to the property manager kicking you out or, you getting a violation or something like that. So it's extremely important.
Yeah, guys, this is huge. And so we should have probably covered this on the onset of this Facebook Live, but the clear definition for midterm rentals is rentals over 30 days. And for those of you that have been exploring the short-term rental model, it is very challenging with the regulatory environment in most cities and counties that if they don't already have some sort of restriction, there's the potential risk that if you start up a business in that particular city or county, that they can have some restrictions in the future for specifically for short-term rentals. And so the huge advantage with midterm rentals, it kind of wide opens up your market in terms of where you can go after and actually, get these units set up in. So that's a huge advantage to not have that as a concern. I mean, that's a big part of the challenge with short-term rentals. We have a quick question from Karim. If you can walk us through, Mark, what's the explanation of what is a corporate lease? When you say corporate lease.
So high level, pretty simple. A corporate lease is a company, an entity, whether it's LLC, S Corp, C Corp, what have you, right? That is taking a lease with the apartment complex. So the process is a little bit different. The application process and the screening process is a little bit different, but that's all it is. It is a corporation that is taking a lease out of the apartment complex or wherever you are. And then stipulations within that corporate lease would allow you to do business.
And a lot of the larger complexes that have, a corporate office, usually the lingo is kind of corporate housing. And so, the starting point is that large complex is going to let you know whether or not they allow corporate housing. And that's kind of the starting point of the conversation. And so if they allow it, then they usually have a process for it. And it's a different procedure, as Mark talked about, versus going the regular tenant route.
Absolutely. And let me add something on that, Rich. You'll get a lot of apartment complex, their leasing agents, whoever answers the phone, they'll shut you down in a heartbeat, right? So my motto in life in general is I don't accept no's from someone not qualified to give me a yes, right?
Yeah.
So if you can't say yes to me, then I'm not going to accept your no. Right. And part of your due diligence is you're more than likely going to have to call every single apartment complex that's within your area or within your market. Right. To really understand who allows, who doesn't allow, why they don't allow, why they do allow. What are the hiccups? Maybe they had a bad experience with someone who was not operating efficiently or not really operating their rental as a business. Right. And so they just don't want the headache. They don't want a lawsuit. They don't want, any type of potential problems or costs down the line. So, making sure you actually speak with the right person first and foremost. So I target when I'm looking at apartment complexes, one, I want to know if it's owner operated, right? And owner managed. And if it's not, who is the property management company that you've hired or that you've contracted with? How many apartment buildings or apartment complexes you have? Who is your property manager? And then who is the regional manager? Regional managers who I really want to have a conversation with, because once I win over the regional manager, now I am able to get into multiple apartment complexes that particular regional manager is over. So it's an easy, insertion, so to speak. Our last 2 units that we just added in Sandy Springs was based upon the relationship that I had with the regional manager over the other units that we have in Sandy Springs that they also manage. So, that's also key.
Yeah, no, I love it. So that's really how we grew our rental arbitrage business. I mean, we weren't focused on midterm, but we were focused on short term. But time and time again, it only takes 1 or 2 of those relationships to really scale your business, because as you get in with those folks that have access to multiple properties, all of a sudden you're going to be getting options for other locations from that first relationship. So it's a very quick way to grow in the beginning. So let's talk a little bit about the numbers, Mark. Talk to us about the revenue potential. I know that there's been, or at least I've historically a lot, and maybe it's because you're very strategic about it, right? You're going after, like you mentioned, the specialty folks. There's a lot, and maybe a lot of the nurses I deal with on Airbnb are kind of the lower level, entry level. They're on a tight budget. They're usually trying to negotiate. They're usually trying to squeeze 2 or 3 of them in one unit to be able to afford to stay there. So talk to me a little bit about what your numbers look like and kind of strategically what you suggest there as far as a strategy.
So we're premium. All right. We are usually the highest in the area. So our units are, so like for instance, our 1-bedrooms in Sandy Springs, we charge $2,800 to $2,900 a month, right? Fully furnished 1-bedroom unit. In Cleveland, I think we're at like a $2,600 to $2,700 because that market's a little bit cheaper. On our 2-bedroom, we're $3,500 to $4,500 a month, right? We charge way more.
What's your monthly lease cost on each of those?
So depending on how you negotiate, right? Sandy Springs right now, their 1-bedrooms are anywhere from about $1,500, $1,600, something like that. We just renegotiated our 18-month term, and we got down to about $1,300 a month for a 1-bedroom. So that added another $200 plus to our cash flow.
Yeah.
But yeah, on the 2-bedroom.
So after utilities and everything, you're very easily at $1,000.
Oh yeah, it has to be, or we're not doing it, right? It has to be like any unit that we take through the underwriting process. We have to net at minimum $1,000. So whether that is, changing locations, whether that is adding something that, that would allow for the additional cost, whether it's a service that we may add as a vertical, right? But yeah, so we have to net a minimum of $1,000 per unit. And in our 2-bedrooms, we're still playing around because we're not even, what month is this? April. We're about 6-7 months in on the 2-bedroom. So not enough numbers to kind of know, but we do anywhere from about 30 to about, we're projected to do about 48 on this 2-bedroom. But yeah, we do anywhere from, between 30 and 40. Let's just give it an average there for our gross revenue. And then with our expenses and stuff, we're netting about 12 plus after we pay off our debt. So the first year obviously is not going to net that, right? Because we have to, pay back all of the additional costs or the initial costs. But yeah, we do about anywhere from about 12 to about 18 net on the 1-bedrooms.
All right, that's good. We got a good question here about are you using any homes for midterms? And if yes, how are you dealing with HOAs? So it sounds like you're only doing apartments right now, but have you looked at doing homes as well for this?
Yeah, so we looked at that, right? If the HOA allows a rental, then we're good, right? Because we don't have to stand by, or we don't have to fall into the short-term rental part of it. So it's as long as the HOA allows a rental and they're not over their percentage maximum for rentals for their subdivision, we're good to go. If we're reaching out to landlord, obviously that landlord has already been approved to have a rental. We thought about doing it, but again, the amenities play, right? Those properties, they don't have the pools, they don't have the gyms, unless it's a larger property. And we haven't, I would say I may look at going at the larger property as long as I'm able to probably house more than 2 people, then it would make sense, right? But our guests are usually individuals, right? We don't get the 4 nurses trying to book. I get the inquiries all the time, but it's not going to be a comfortable stay. Now we can have, like on our flagship unit, really every unit we have sleep sofas. So you're going to have at least a full or a queen size bed in the living room. We don't do any type of air mattress stuff. We don't do any cots or anything like that. It's strictly king size beds and the sleep sofas. So for our 1-bedroom, we can comfortably sleep 4 people, but not for a 60-day time frame, right?
Yeah.
So we don't get those folks that are cramming. Now our 2-bedroom unit right now, it's half and half. So the first guest was a couple. It was an executive that worked in Dunwoody, and him and his wife stayed. The second guest was an individual. The third guest was an individual, and our current guest right now is a lady and her mom. So, we're not getting the nurses that are splitting. Most travel nurses, to be very honest, when they're at our price points, they usually travel by themselves.
Yeah. What's the average lead booking time for your guests or for your nurses?
It changes and it varies. The first year we were about 22 days out. We've increased since then. So now it's about a month. It's about a month booking out. But every now and again, like right now, I have a unit that is going to be vacant on the 5th. We don't have a booking yet for it. We had a few inquiries. What I'm noticing is a lot of people are requesting to go off platform. And although we absolutely love that, we don't want to be in Airbnb jail. So we have a whole, like, all of our messages are automated. We have a complete structured approach to that, where we let them know, hey, we're not allowed to communicate. However, our cancellation policy is XYZ. If you book now, you can cancel within 48 hours, get all your money back. Or we say something like, why don't you book the first month? And if you want to extend, you can extend with us if you like it.
Yeah.
Something along those lines. And then
Right.
once they book, we get all the contact information. We store it, we track it, and then we can reach out to them directly.
Yeah, it's definitely something going on in the economy where we've seen a lot of that as well on a lot of our different properties where I've been doing this for 9 years, and a lot of people are getting savvy or discount, and they understand that the Airbnb fees is a big part, a 20% bump on their stay. And so, a lot of our average 4 or 5 day stays have been asking to go off platform. And I agree with you. It's not worth the risk because Airbnb has actually increased their policing with AI tools. You used to be able to get away with typing out the phone number, like in odd words and numbers and sentences. But the AI tool will shut you down. And what they're doing is they'll just block the communication, right? So you'll be sitting there like a ghost town thinking that the guest isn't responding. That's because they blocked it down. You can't communicate with them anymore.
So okay. Let me give you a tidbit. Okay. Yeah. They do that all the time. All right. They do. The minute they say directly, so they're trigger words that the AI catches, right?
Yeah.
But here's how you get away with it or get around it. All right. You go through your email. So if you're in the platform and if you're in the messages, it'll disappear instantly, right? You won't be able to, I've been mid-conversation and it disappeared.
Right.
So what we've done is we just go to the email, the notification, and we click and it sends us straight back to the message. So fingers crossed, Airbnb does not, catch that loophole.
Have that connection,
and, and shut that down. But yeah, that usually gets us in there. And again, this is a host responsibility, right? So our average answer is less than an hour, right? So we have maintained for the last 2 years an average response of, sometimes I'm responding within 10 minutes, right? But I don't have that many units and I don't have that many inquiries. So I don't have to worry about that, right? And although it is somewhat automated, we try to respond. So usually we catch the information prior to Airbnb, right? Closing the chat out. But what I've started seeing this year is they have, once the message comes, it like auto scans the message and you get that prompt at the bottom, the safety precaution prompt that comes up. that says something along the lines of, be careful with this message. What do you want to do? Do you want to respond? And I'm always responding. I'm not going to report somebody, but yeah, I get it, right? If I'm Airbnb, I don't want you talking off platform. I need to make sure that I catch that commission off of every booking. So I understand.
And the last thing you want to do is get locked out and your profile and all your listings blocked. That's the last thing you want to do.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So what's next with your growth plans? Are you looking at other hospital areas? Are you looking at other types of opportunities? What's your next 12, 24 months plan look like for midterm rentals?
Yeah, so our next 12, we want to grow in the current spaces that we're in. So I'm already at 3 units in Sandy Springs. I'll probably add 1 more in the next 12 to 24 months. Our Cleveland, we are on track to add another 4 this year. So I'm going to really expand that space. There are some new apartment complexes that are being built. That Cleveland market is really turning. And there's a lot more demand for short-term stuff. In between our long-term bookings, or midterm bookings, we get a lot of requests for short-term stuff. So, because people are traveling there for medical procedures and they want to be with their families, they can't stay in the hotel. In the hospital. So they need somewhere close by. So we're probably going to ramp up that Cleveland market. And I'll be honest, man, I don't want this to be a job, right? And so right now it's a great space. It's a great vertical. It's a great addition to the business. So I'll probably flatline or stop at 10. I think 10 is the number until something changes that explodes otherwise. But at that point, the rental business will be bringing in anywhere from, $10,000 to $15,000 on a monthly basis. And that's good enough for us, right? Our primary business is real estate, the investing side. So this is just an added vertical to that. So that's what the midterm rental 12 to 24 month looks like.
Yeah. So we didn't really touch on this before. So your major real estate business is kind of diverse. Besides midterm rentals, you're also doing, are you doing wholesaling? You doing long-term rentals? What's the, you're doing? Okay.
Yeah. So we have a couple flips. We do primarily wholesale, the majority of the stuff. We cherry pick, obviously, the ones that I want to keep and turn those into some long-term rentals. We're only doing long-term rentals in emerging markets. So that is your Columbus, your Albany, your Warner Robins, Macon, Augusta a little bit, right? We're not really buying real estate to hold in the city right now because just the price is too high. And because we've gotten so spoiled with the cash flow that we're getting on the midterm rental side and in the emerging market side, I can't see a need to do rentals in bigger cities. Now, yes, there is an appreciation play there, and you'll be able to do a lot more creative real estate with that, but we're okay. So our primary business is mostly wholesale, and then we turn those big checks into more passive stuff.
Yeah, what I love about that is your midterm rental business is kind of laying your consistent monthly cash flow, where you're probably making different decisions now in your wholesaling business and being a lot more selective because you have that luxury now. So that's a huge benefit.
Yeah, 150%. And wholesaling, as with any other piece of real estate, it's active income, right? So
you got to keep feeding that pipeline.
You got to keep feeding it, right? And so when we took our focus off of wholesaling, when we were adding the last 2 units, it you could already see through our KPIs that our business dropped because of that, right? And so it's just being able to do both. But our team is not that big. All of my team's virtual. And so I still carry and wear a lot of hats because I just have enough. I have time to do it. Right. I would say I may spend on average 5 hours a month on the midterm rental stuff, if that, right. And it just allows me the freedom to do a lot more things, like you said. So the decision.
So you touched a little bit on this earlier. So you're filling a lot of those gaps in between those midterm stays with regular 4 or 5 day window bookings that they kind of fill in the calendar so that you're not sitting empty too long.
Yeah.
Does that conflict sometimes though, when you might get a 6-day booking and you might have somebody that wants to be there long term but can't book because somebody's already in there? Does that create a conflict at all?
So that's a great question. So the only short-term rental that we do is when we have a gap in between midterm bookings, right? So like for instance, one of our units, and I'll probably get a midterm rental stay on this one, but one of our units, we have right now, the guest is going to be checking out on the 21st of May. And we have another guest coming in June 20th, right? So this 1 month window is like three and a half week window, right? Oh, it's June 10th, not June 20th. Yeah. So I'm going to open that window up. That's the only time we do it, because remember I talked about that mindset about open calendar syndrome, right? I want my calendar open. I don't want to see a 2-night booking in the middle of June or a 5-day booking in the middle of July, because then that's going to cancel my entire summer out. So I'm booked out all summer except for one unit. And so more than likely we're going to see that unit go. And what I wouldn't do is I would not allow to have a short-term rental if I don't already have a midterm rental booking, right?
So
I'm
you'll
not
turn
doing
them
that.
away. So you're not doing an instant booking. You're kind of, doing inquiry only kind of deal and controlling that situation.
Yeah. So our instant booking is only for 30-day minimum, right? So I will allow you to instant book. As far as once you meet that, we have certain strict criteria. But as far as the short-term pieces, when we open those gaps in between, I'll allow inquiries only. Like I don't allow instant booking for those because I still want to, vet the guest, right?
Mm-hmm.
The short-term stay guest is a completely different avatar, right, than a midterm guest.
Sure.
So the thing about that is that, we do background checks on all of our midterm guests, credit checks, eviction checks, all of that. But as far as the short-term rental folks, I just still want to have a conversation and, ask them, what's the purpose of their stay, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. Have you had any issues with non-payment and evictions?
No.
Good.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. Fingers crossed. I haven't had any issues with that. We've been very blessed in that regard. We use Furnish Finder Key Check for our rent collection for the midterm stuff, and it's like an online property manager. It sends email reminders for when their rents are due. It collects a deposit. We have Stripe accounts attached to those. So, I can easily invoice someone. If I'm not using KeyCheck, I can invoice them and they have to pay through Stripe directly. And they have to pay up front. It's an upfront pay. You're not staying and then paying afterwards. So there's no arrears, right? It's an upfront payment. And so as fast as we've had folks, and then we're always reminding them, 2 weeks before their stay expires, we will say, hey, we have the opportunity to extend, what's going on? Is everything okay? You guys enjoying your stay? Do we need to block out some dates for you? And stuff like that. But remember, we're at a premium price point. So,
yeah,
it's again, a completely different guest.
All right, let's take on some of these questions that we have.
Okay, certainly.
So how do you find the right contact for the corporate lease and those regional managers?
You got to do the work. You got to do the work, right? So if you're sitting behind a desk, LinkedIn's is a good way to find, they're going to be leasing consultant, leasing manager, that sort of stuff. You can kind of do it that way. Yeah. Google works great if you're looking for apartment complexes. You put in the location of the hospital and, you'll be able to identify the apartment complexes around the area. And you have to call, right? And if you can't get through, because a lot of them put you through these automated messages, right? These 1-800 numbers and stuff like that. Sometimes you just have to pull up, right? I am known to walk into an apartment complex and ask to speak to the property manager, and then I'm having a conversation with them. and finding out who the regional manager is and that sort of stuff. So you have to put in the work. I mean, unless you have an inside, contact for property management in your area, there's no sweet sauce to finding those people. You just have to, ask those questions.
Makes sense. And then what are the typical roles in your team?
Yeah, so majority of my team is on the real estate side. I primarily do all of the midterm stuff because, again, it's not much, right?
Yeah, it's almost, especially since you got them staying there for 5-6 weeks at a time. Once you get them in there, you're done for the moment.
Yeah, I mean, unless they've paid, right, exactly. Unless they've paid for like additional verticals, car rentals, extra cleanings, grocery delivery stuff.
Now, just from my experience with longer term stays, Mark, and the main reason I do short term rentals is because I hated being a long term rental landlord.
Right.
After fixing up properties, and then they're in there for a year, they don't pay you, and then you kick them out, and then they tear the place up. And so I've got a bad taste in my mouth about people staying there too long. So what we do with our midterm bookings, I actually make it mandatory that my cleaners come in there every 2 weeks, not only to clean, but also to put our eyes on the property to make sure nothing's going crazy. I don't know if, because it's nurses, maybe you don't have that as an issue, but
that's a great point, right? In addition to monitoring the cameras and stuff, right? And we don't have that many units, so it's easily monitored. We can check. So I use a lot of devices, right? So I have, Minute for noise detection. I have, our Google Nest for our temperature controls on all of our units. And our Wi-Fi, I use AT&T Business. And so I am able to see how many devices are tapped into our Wi-Fi network. So I can easily at the push of a button find out how many people are in the unit. So I'm not concerned that way. But as far, like you said, it's a different avatar. So there's not that need to go in and check. Now, here's the great thing about apartment complexes. These folks have mandatory inspections annually, right? So whether it is a fire safety inspection, whether they're testing and changing out air filters, we are going to have access to the unit. So there was one time where a nurse and her significant other booked our unit for 4 months or something like that. And they moved furniture, which I was not happy with, right? But they were on different schedules. So I understand so all of our units have desks, right, in the bedrooms in addition. So they literally moved the desk out of the bedroom into the living room and set up the living room as a bedroom. So they converted it into a 2-bedroom, I guess, so that they can work on their schedules.
Right.
But we went in. This was actually a maintenance call. The washing machine kind of blocked the door to get in. It was a whole fiasco. But that's how I was able to see it. So after that, we quickly added into our lease agreement, you are not allowed to move any furniture. Everything has to stay exactly the same. And then we added a bunch of liability stuff in there that, hold us harmless. But for the longer stay right now, we have on our 2-bedroom, we are doing weekly cleanings. We added that as a vertical. And so we are able to go in there every weekend. Thank God, because these amazing women can cook their butts off, and it smells gorgeous and delicious in there. But that's I'm okay with that, right? But my next guest may not be. So we're happy that we're actually able to come in there and do the weekly cleanings to stop any of those scents from sticking. And then obviously we're absolutely 100% non-smoking in all of our units. Because again, remember, we're catering to nurses. And so nurses are absolutely the cleanest guests of all, doctors as well, some doctors. But, it's just one of those things where I am a very white glove type of person. So I am extreme attention to detail. So I can assure any of our guests with guarantee that it'll be the cleanest unit you've ever seen. Right. I mean, if I got to get a magnifying glass to look at the different hair strains that fall between the cracks and stuff, I'm looking at those, and I hold my cleaners accountable. So, it's just one of those things where when you're charging a premium, if it's not a luxury place where, you're floor to ceiling windows and waterfalls in the living room and, fireplaces in every bedroom, right? If we're not that property, then it has to be extremely clean and very well designed. So I can't afford to have any misses on our cleanliness for our units, because then it won't justify the price that we're charging.
Yeah. So, Marc, this has been super, super informative for everybody. Really appreciate you taking the time. I have one last question for you. Knowing what you know now about midterm rentals, what's one thing that you would suggest for somebody that's starting to get into it?
I would say the biggest lesson is don't be cheap on the decor, right? These folks are not in and out. This is not a hotel, right? We don't have to have the bare minimum. And you don't want the bare minimum. You want to really hire a designer if you can afford it, or take the time out to really define each space, each room, each crevice, each corner. Our team goes in and they measure each wall, height and width. We measure the height from the floor to the window base, the sides of every window, every wall, because when I'm ordering online, you're going to get measurements and you're not seeing these items, right? Whether it's a picture, whether it's, whatever the case may be, a lamp or not, whatever piece of furniture that you're putting. So you want to be able to map out in your mind how each of these spaces are laid out, right? So that you will know, okay, this furniture won't work, it's too big, or this table is too small because of the space, right? So you want to really splurge. I mean, don't go overboard, right? But you want to have, the necessities, because your guests are going to be there for a whole month, if not more. And so you want to have the blender, or you want to have the rice cooker, right? I don't suggest having a rice cooker. I just had one guest request it because they're coming from India, so that's no problem, right? I have a rice cooker at home. I'm a big fan of rice cooker, right? But you want to have.
There goes the smell of the unit. There's going to be a bunch of curry that's going to be cooked, which is okay.
Gosh, man. Right now we have some Nigerians, and boy, it smells amazing in there. But yeah. But no, so you don't want to splurge. You don't want to over splurge, but you want to take the time out to really design the space. And the second biggest thing is you want to be extremely consistent, right? Whether it's consistent with your messaging, consistent with your responses, consistent with your touches after they check in. You want to make sure that the guest experience is one that blows them away, right? So to give you an example, and I'm sure you do this with your units, but after our guests check in, we give them about 24 to 48 hours, and then we're touching them again, right? So how was the check-in process? Do you have everything you need? Was there anything, that wasn't up to par, right? So we're already tapping into that 5-star, quality.
One of our go-to standard messages. One of our go-to standard messages is the next day. Just that, what you described, but also, here's some local spots that are good for brunch or breakfast or lunch that we would recommend. And we kind of give them a little bit of a local intel so that on that first day, they can kind of know where to navigate. And so that little nudge goes a long way as well with the review process.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we get really granular, right? From emergency numbers to the local fire department, police department, where the post office is, where the grocery stores are, where you're shopping, where your restaurants. We dive all the way in. We have manuals, so we still have paper manuals. We're looking at a company called TouchStay. They have a digital manual product that we're liking, so we may test it out. But we have a manual there. They have a basket with wine, snacks, waters. I mean, you name it, right? And so it's all there in front of them when they check in, so that they're able to have some kind of reading material, and it shows everything that they need to know. You know, check-ins, check-outs, how to exit, how to enter, emergency exits. I mean, we cover it all. So, I mean, it's really important because remember, you know, whether they're coming from another state or another country, they're not familiar with the area. So we very rarely have local guests, right? Majority of our guests are out of state. And then this year we've had just majority out of the country. So, you know, it's important. It's important. And for you guys, you know, your short term, if they're only staying 3, 4 days, 5 days at a time, 2 days at a time, right? You want to check immediately, right? You don't want to wait till mid stay or at the end of their stay to touch base.
Right.
So I think the 24 hours is a great touch point for the shorter stays.
Sure. Totally agree. So listen, Marc, again, I really appreciate you jumping on. What's the best way for folks to reach out to you? Is that your Instagram?
Yeah. So at Dowden.invest on IG. You know, I'm terrible at emails. I have, oh my gosh, I have so many emails that I still have yet to respond to. And if you guys are looking at this, because I did post this on my IG. So if you see this, I apologize that I haven't responded to your email yet, but I promise you I'll get to it. But yeah, no, IG is the best way, at Dowden.invest on IG. And if you really, really want to get in contact with me, get with Rich, and then he can connect us, because I'm not going to give you my phone number.
Most definitely. Totally understand. No, I love it. So Marc, again, thank you so much. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Give us a thumbs up or a heart in the comments if you guys felt this was productive and informative today. I really did. And so if you're ready to take the next step and you want to learn about scaling a short-term rental business, you know, feel free to reach out to me on Facebook Messenger. We can have a quick call and see if what we do in our program is a good fit for you or not. And so until then, Marc, I really appreciate it again. Thanks, buddy.
I appreciate you having me, man.
Yeah, we went a little over, but you know, when the content is good and informative, we got to keep going with it. So really appreciate it. We'll have you back again sometime soon and get an update on your expansion plans for sure.
Of course. I look forward to it. You guys have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everybody. See you next week.